Dear Mr. Varadkar, as Irish politicians travel the world, promoting Ireland as a great little place to do business, we write to you this St. Patrick's Day as law-abiding citizens and as members of the Integrity Ireland Association, which is a voluntary body promoting justice, transparency and accountability in the institutions of the Irish state. Our secondary mission statement is challenging corruption, cronyism and criminal cover-ups, which is a regrettable addition born of years of frustration in trying to deal legitimately and lawfully with our justice system in particular. And this is why we are writing to you in this open letter, to alert you as Taoiseach to a crisis of criminality and misconduct ongoing in our courts, and of serial attempts by court service personnel, by the DPP's office, by the Department of Justice and by an increasing number of compromised judges to cover up and conceal these crimes. Now, recent scandals in the Gardai and at the Ministry of Justice have been reasonably well reported on, but despite our best efforts to draw attention to this shocking situation in the courts, it seems that not only the Irish mainstream media, but your own Minister for Justice, Charlie Flanagan, seems unwilling, unable or incapable of taking any action. Indeed, it appears there is a deliberate intention to avoid, to evade, to suppress or ignore the disturbing facts. Accordingly, we now invite you to meet with us so that we can apprise you personally of the details and the facts, so you are best placed to serve the public in full knowledge and awareness of the appalling levels of misconduct, corruption, criminal collusion and cover-ups ongoing in our justice system in particular, and of the unlawful, systemic and sinister targeting of those of us who have tried to speak up or dared to speak out. Remembering that the Department of Justice is supposedly predicated on, quote, making Ireland a safe, fair and inclusive place to live and work, close quotes, and that any justice system worthy of the name must, by definition, be rooted in law and justice. Here are a few disturbing facts of our own experience, Taoiseach, which we would hope would shock and appall any decent or moral person, not to mention, of course, any elected representative or conscientious resident of this troubled state. Because it would be less than fair of our politicians to continue to enthusiastically promote Ireland abroad as a great little place to do business, while we, the Irish people, cannot even rely on simple, basic, honest justice here at home. 4 points, Mr. Varadkar. Firstly, the DPP's office has a stated policy of not prosecuting white-collar or regulatory crime, but is knowingly pressing for petty prosecutions against pro-justice activists or whistleblowers based on knowingly false allegations and fraudulent evidence. 2. So-called officers of the court, including compromised Gardai, court service staff, solicitors and barristers, are routinely engaged in flagrant breaches of the law and the Constitution and of their respective codes of conduct. 3. Scores of judges, literally, have committed shocking violations of their oaths of office and are openly facilitating law-breaking on a chronic scale. And number 4, those, like us, who try to shine a light into state corruption and criminality are being targeted by Gardai and the DPP for clandestine surveillance, for false prosecutions, for denial of state entitlements, charge stacking, physical assaults and unlawful detention. And this is only the tip of a very dirty iceberg. Furthermore, of all of the various statutory oversight bodies which have been set up ostensibly to hold errant wrongdoers to account, it has been our collective experience to date that none of them are properly operating within the law, the Constitution or their sworn mandates to the people of Ireland, especially when it is agents of the state who are being exposed in chronic wrongdoing. Now, when we speak of statutory oversight bodies, in this particular context, we mean the Garda Síochána Ombudsman Commission, GSOC, the Irish Human Rights Commission, the Law Society of Ireland, and senior management of the court service for their abject failures to address all of the documented proofs of systemic wrongdoing by persons under their command or in organisations or agencies they are supposedly mandated to oversee. Not to mention the supposed oversight functions of the Minister for Justice, which seem only to exist on paper. To be clear, we are not suggesting that these elements of our so-called justice system are simply incompetent or are otherwise inadvertently failing us, but that these so-called statutory oversight bodies are intrinsically fraudulent institutions that have been set up on contrived and deceptive premises, purposefully designed to deceive, mislead and defraud the Irish people. They give the false impression that they are in the business of genuine lawful accountability, but in fact they are actually suppressing, denying and covering up criminal activity and shielding from accountability a largely corrupt status quo which is collectively profiting massively and perversely from these systemic deceptions in various illicit ways. Even more unsettling is the statutory appeals process in the courts against reckless, bizarre and incomprehensible decisions by capricious judges, which is now so convoluted and onerous as to engender disbelief and dismay by those who have experienced it firsthand. Indeed, it is tragic to have to say that many of these official transgressions, which are effectively destroying the lives and happiness of otherwise decent, ordinary people, that these are being knowingly and recklessly directed by persons in positions of influence, and this is being done with thinly veiled contempt for the law and the Constitution. In short, that these so-called statutory oversight bodies are not just merely toothless and ineffective, but they are in fact criminal in intent and purpose, inasmuch as their unspoken and undeclared agenda is to suppress, cover up, deny and delay any and all complaints delivered to them about the wrongdoing of agents of the state, or by politically connected elites, or by vested interests such as the banks and their compromised affiliates in the courts. Because after years of frustrating attempts to address these wrongs, and after hundreds of documented instances of undeniable wrongdoing, it has become abundantly clear that if you move in the right political circles, that no matter how vile or outrageous the transgressions you commit, that you will effectively remain untouchable and unaccountable. Now we realise that these are appalling claims to make, Taoiseach, especially if they're not true. But unfortunately they are true, and are supported by such an abundance of evidence and proofs as to render mute and invalid any argument to the contrary. Accordingly, Mr. Varadkar, and after spending months and years trying in vain to solicit due and proper responses from numerous authority figures, we now approach you personally with our proofs and evidences of serial, systemic corruption and criminal conduct by a range of personnel who are employed by the state in positions of power and authority, and ask that you set up a meeting with us at your earliest convenience so as to bring to an immediate end this crisis of criminality in our courts and at the office of the DPP in particular. And before you, or any of your aides, advisors or media consultants, attempt to deflect this most serious matter by blithely quoting legislation which effectively renders the DPP's office, the judiciary, the court service, the Irish Human Rights Commission and GSOC all beyond scrutiny because of their supposed statutory independence. Let us make the position abundantly clear, Mr. Varadkar, that what we are alleging is that these particular institutions, or at the very least a considerable number of persons operating within them, are violating the fundamental overriding constitutional requirement, as laid out in legislation, that they are explicitly, quote, subject to the law and the Constitution. In other words, Taoiseach, any claim, assertion or argument that the DPP's office or the courts, for example, cannot be looked into by the Dáil because of their so-called statutory independence is rendered utterly invalid in face of all of the evidence that these agencies are in fact repeatedly breaking the law and violating the Constitution with the full knowledge of their respective managements and of the Minister for Justice, and that they are doing this with scandalous levels of arrogance, hubris and impunity. In particular, we would be seeking a formal and genuinely independent Commission of Inquiry as to 1. How and why so many formal criminal complaints lodged with An Garda Síochána and GSOC have simply been ignored. How and why several criminal prosecutions have been denied, ignored, suppressed or inexplicably disappeared by the DPP's office and the courts. How the court service can unlawfully erase evidence, alter transcripts, keep secret databases and deny the public effective access to justice. as to how and why there is no statutory oversight of the court service, other than via the self-appointed Court Service Board, which has a controlling interest of 10 sitting judges. As to how and why various officers of the court are being allowed by our judiciary to engage in overt criminal conduct, such as fraud, perjury, deception, collusion, contempt of court, criminal damage, filing patently fraudulent affidavits and other blatant attempts to obstruct, pervert or otherwise interfere in the due course of justice. We would also ask the obvious question: why is it that we do not have an overriding objective to ensure swift, practical and cost-effective justice, such as is the case in other modern common law jurisdictions, such as Australia, New Zealand, the USA and the UK? Indeed, why must our archaic, onerous and exorbitant justice system be shrouded in so much disobliging secrecy and oppressive restrictions on public participation, when there is a clear and specific constitutional requirement that justice be delivered in public? The question answers itself, Taoiseach. Even with a poorly informed knowledge of the law, any ordinary person can see that there is far too much wrongdoing going on in our courts for the judiciary to be able to honestly claim that they are in fact subject to the law and the Constitution. And they cannot therefore operate with any semblance of legitimacy other than by contrived and oppressive means, and with the complicit silence of the legal profession and the court service. So, they operate illegitimately, and in doing so make a mockery of our law and our Constitution, and of everybody's faith in our justice system. The rot has gone on too long, Taoiseach. The public is slowly waking up to the realities being exposed on social media, and they're getting sick and tired of all of the official lies, the premeditated deceptions, the media spin, the wasted millions, the obscene wages and pensions being dished out to so many moral deviants in the corridors of power, while we, the ordinary people, get serially exploited, abused and lied to for years. The merits of any nation are determined by the way it treats its most vulnerable, not by how it treats the most privileged. And it is the probity and integrity of any given country's justice system which underpins the essential quality of that society. The fact of the matter is that we do not have genuine justice here in Ireland. What we have is a mere pretense of justice, cleverly constructed and cultivated to give the outward appearance of propriety, with fine, imperious buildings and the showy trappings of medieval courts, as if the mere wearing of a wig and gown or the quoting of lofty titles can somehow sanctify the craven actions of career liars and moral deviants. This is the shadowy world of compromised sycophants, whose only ambition is to crawl to the top at any price and at any cost, safe in the knowledge that their equally compromised colleagues have got their backs, and that the so-called terms of reference of any statutory inquiry or investigation into any alleged official wrongdoing will be shaped and framed in advance by the shrewd but unsettling caveat that no vote is to be specifically named, blamed or shamed, close quotes. And even on those rare occasions where culpability is factually established, the public can expect the records to be sealed for decades, so as to ensure, once again, that unless there is some genuine accountability in the afterlife, that the perpetrators of some truly horrific crimes and of lifelong offences against the public will absolutely and never be held to account in their own lifetimes. A cosy arrangement indeed, but undoubtedly one that is also amoral, sinister, disturbing and perverse, and some might even say diabolical. It is a sad historical fact, Mr. Varadkar, that Ireland already has an appalling record of shocking national scandals which were subsequently covered up so as to protect truly wicked and villainous individuals from being held to account for what any right-thinking person would surely describe as crimes against humanity. And this situation in our courts is shaping up to be yet another dark chapter in the history of this state. You, sir, are in a unique position to at least begin to change that history and help return some pride and respect to those of us who would see Ireland reclaim its place amongst the saints and scholars of history. St. Patrick is credited with bringing Christianity to Ireland, along with all of its core values of truth, honesty and justice, of empathy and love for others, especially the oppressed and the vulnerable. And it was these core principles which would establish Ireland as the legendary land of saints and scholars, of which we are all so rightfully proud. But not so today's Ireland, where rampant greed, exploitation and oppression are the norm, and where all but the connected elite are assured of only one thing: systemic, endemic injustice. We therefore respectfully urge you to make the right choice, to do the right thing, and immediately address this insidious culture of criminality in our courts, which is bringing eternal shame and disgrace on all who would call themselves truly Irish. We respectfully close by repeating the offer that we made to your predecessor, Enda Kenny, to provide your office with suitably qualified personnel from the Integrity Ireland membership to conduct a truly independent inquiry into this sad and sorry state of affairs before any more damage is done to the image and reputation of Ireland on the international stage. Thank you for your time. We look forward to hearing back from you soon. Taoiseach.